We are now just 32 days away from November 5th. That is Election Day. And we know Pennsylvania could be, or very well be, at the center of it all.
Absolutely. CBS Philadelphia's Dan Snyder sat down with Commonwealth Secretary Al Schmidt this week to see how the state is getting ready for the big election. Dan.
Hey, Natasha and Siafa. Yeah, Secretary Schmidt is overseeing the state's election this year. He also headed up Philadelphia's tumultuous presidential election 4 years ago. And the secretary says he learned a lot from that experience. One thing Schmidt says hasn't changed, though, they are still contending with a lot of misinformation.
It's certainly been a frustration. I mean, there were about a third of the electorate in 2020 that did not have confidence in the results, and there's about a third now, despite an avalanche of lawsuits and all the rest that all found that there was no evidence of any sort of widespread voter fraud or election irregularities or whatever else. Whether it's a hand-marked paper ballot when you mail your ballot in, or a voter verifiable paper ballot when you vote at the polls, there's a paper ballot record of every vote that's cast that's used in 2 audits after every election to make sure the results are accurate.
Schmidt says our elections here are safe and secure, and right now he's in the process of visiting election leaders in all 67 counties across the Commonwealth to make sure they have what they need.
Well, Dan, I know you mentioned a little bit about what we saw back in 2020, of course, the challenges, the misinformation that was out there, the threats even against election workers. Did Secretary Schmidt talk to you about how they're preparing for that possibility this time around?
Yeah, absolutely, Natasha. And Schmidt was on the receiving end of a lot of those threats. This year, Governor Shapiro formed the Election Threats Task Force. That's something that Schmidt leads. It aims to bring election leaders and law enforcement together to protect the voting process, voters, and those election officials.
It's something that I hope does not occur or reoccur, but it did happen before, and it would be naive to not prepare for it. So it's far better to be prepared for that possibility than not. When we experienced a lot of that in 2020, it was really new to all of us. The 2020 election was unlike any other when it came to threats of intimidation or violence or any other rest. So we just want to make sure we're fully prepared going into this election.
And, you know, Schmidt says fighting that misinformation continues to be one of their biggest and most frustrating challenges. He really wants people, you know, if you see something that sounds outlandish or crazy, to check with trusted sources like the Department of State. Natasha, Siafa.
Good information. Thank you very much, Dan. Appreciate it. Well, we are on your side, of course, helping to answer any questions that you might have about your vote. You can read more on our website, cbsphiladelphia.com.